Right, it should be live now. Let's have a look. Yep, I think we're live, mate. Says we're still waiting. What? No, we're on.
Yeah, I think we're live, mate.
Right, we're on. Oh, God. Right, that was fun.
Doesn't seem.
Yeah, we're on. Right, we're on.
Yes, we're on. Right, don't worry, everybody. We just sat there talking to ourselves for 20 minutes. So we covered a lot, really.
No, we'll go for it again quickly, mate. So
yeah,
Noble Street first of all. Obviously, a big talking point. What do you think of that?
Well, as I explained to me and you earlier, it's I think in terms of a fan, it's sort of a good scenario for us in a way where we see a player kind of follow fan opinion a little bit. Obviously, I think with Noble in the past, there's been criticism where he seems to have, I wouldn't say on purpose, but as a captain, he's sided with his employer and he's had to say the right things at the right time and all this kind of stuff. But it was a real changing moment, and obviously I sent you the tweet when it came out because I actually thought there's no way that's staying up. So I sent it to you, took a screenshot, and was like, "Oh, fingers crossed." But it's still there, mate. So I mean, he's done all right to keep it there.
At least it shows as well, mate, that the players are, unified in the sense that they didn't want Diangana to leave. Because look at about 7 or 8 players liked it or replied, and even ex-players as well, mate. Quote tweeted it saying this, it's a poor decision from West Ham because we pride ourselves off the Academy of Football. We didn't. I think we've just tarnished that reputation, to be honest with you. Because what does it send to the other players, mate? The fact that Kemp on loan out of Blackpool now. What will he be thinking when you go out on loan, you prove yourself, and they say, all right, well, when you've done that, we'll take a look at you and we'll involve you in the first team. Diangana's done exactly that. They've decided to sell him.
Yeah, that's the point, mate. I think that's what obviously Jim White come out and said. Listen, why are they moaning? This is the reason why. Obviously, I don't know why that bloke continue talks about West Ham. We ain't got a clue. And then Trevor Sinclair comes out and says, "Well, actually, mate, he's an academy product. We were excited about it. I think it was him and Laura Woods as well, saying he's a great product."
Yeah,
and then you commented on him and done multiple videos and posts on him and said, "Listen, he was going to be the player, wasn't he, to link up with Wilshere and give him that service." And we've lost the key player going into the start of the season.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Like you said, he would have provided so much service for Haller. Because Haller like that, last season, and you saw in the Ipswich game the impact that Diangana can have around, he can get the best out of Haller because Haller was crying out for that. So surely from that sense, they thought, all right, we'll keep him and we'll maybe even negotiating up the price a bit because we've said this before to each other. What was it? 18 million quid up front plus add-ons is absolutely nothing in this day and age. It's absolutely nothing, especially when Burnley are demanding 50 million for Tarkowski. I know there's a difference. Tarkowski's Premier League experience, and you could argue that Diangana's not. You could argue that he's not Premier League proven, but he would have been. And in a few years, West Brom will get double what they paid for him because he'll be at somewhere like Leicester or even an Arsenal. He's that good for me. He's that good.
Yeah, I think that's gone under the radar, and I think that's what main media outlets sort of feed off of is he wasn't guaranteed to play for West Ham, even though we knew that was the case, that he probably would start. But you see the likes of Southampton, Fulham, Leicester, all of these teams, especially people like Southampton and Leicester, who look at young players that are going to come on and play a high-intensity game. Teams like that don't look, with proper recruitment strategies, don't look at players like Grady if they don't want them. And that's the frustrating thing. And I think when he left, that Tarkowski bid was leaked. Obviously, 20 million for Tarkowski is a joke because even though me and you don't think he's 50 mil, he's definitely not going for 20. And then obviously the rumour of Said Ben Rama coming to West Ham. I don't think he'll end up at West Ham at all. No. But it was funny, wasn't it, how they go, it's all right, or was it Clarence Hughes? It's all right, don't worry, we'll get Ben Rama in. oh, it's 30 mil. Oh, that's too much for us.
Yeah,
And yet
exactly.
we're bidding 30 mil for Tarkowski.
Diangana. Yeah, but it's just papering over the cracks, mate. And at the end of the day, Tarkowski said he doesn't want to come, and the only reason he would is because we double his wages, because he won't be on that much at Burnley, or because he wants to play internationally, which is fair enough. Every player has their own aspirations, but I just think he'd use us as a stepping stone, and I'm not sure we'd get much resale value on him. So I'd go 35 tops, but he's not worth any more. But at the same time, like me and you said before, you could pursue two young, good targets without a left back and a centre back. I'd prioritise full-backs over a centre back at the moment, because Balbuena's still at the club. Diop's obviously, still there, even though he's a sellable asset. But you know what it leads to, mate? You know what this is screaming of? Declan Rice going for 80 million quid at the end of the window, and them just splashing it on a load of rubbish. That's what it's screaming of.
Yeah, I think that will. Well, I've heard that Chelsea are looking to get ready to come back in for Rice. I think we all hope that they brought Silva in, and at the point they brought Malang Sarr as well. So we thought that it was over. Clearly, they're going to try and stump the money up from somewhere. Listen, the thing is, right, with someone like Tarkowski, yeah, if it was £35 million and West Ham were a fairly well-off club, and we were going to spend 80 million, you know what? He's a good centre-back. He will fit in. Just pay him. We'll bring someone else. But as fans, we know that 35 mil, unless you sell Declan, that's it. There's nothing else you can bring in. And I'm like, every centre-back, full-back, strikers, probably another midfielder, all weak areas. Yeah. But let's try and get the ones that are the most urgent. Not, we need a centre-back. And I don't understand, mate. The thing I don't understand about is David Moyes obviously has looked into this before the transfer window opened. He would have known exactly who he wanted. Yeah, we've systematically seen his targets and his players move away. Matty Cash to Aston Villa. Ben Rama's too expensive. Ezzy's gone to Palace.
Villa as well.
Watkins has gone to... That is a great signing. And I did say, I think it's steep. I'm not denying that. But that guy is an intelligent football player. And with Jack Grealish as a number 10...
Scores goals.
He scores goals. And exactly. And I just think we're so frustrated as a club. We should be sitting there saying, we'll bring Tarkowski in for 35. We'll bring Ollie Watkins for 28. We'll bring another one for 20. That should be a good window for West Ham, bringing in quality players in the right areas. Yeah. But we can't afford to bring multiple players in, and we can't even afford to bring in loans that other clubs are doing, like Fulham.
Yeah, I think loan deals are risk averse, because if they don't work out, you can just send them back. But I think the owners are doing exactly the same thing they said they wouldn't do anymore, which is spend a lot of money on, like Haller and Fornals. They were gambles, weren't they? Haller was 45 million, Anderson was 45 million. They weren't proven in the Premier League. They were big gambles. You could say they haven't worked out yet. With especially Haller and Fornals. We know what Anderson's like, but they're doing the same thing. Tarkowski's Premier League proven, there's no doubt about it. But with that 35 million quid, or however between 35 million and 50. He's spending it on one player. That needs to go on a few players. Look at Wolves and the way they do their scouting system. That new striker they got, they've tracked him since under 15s.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it, mate?
Under 15s. And even that Marcel, who was at Lyon, he's 31. You could say that's he's past it and all this. He's only £1 million. They've identified him because he fits in the structure. They play the three at the back. He's very good on the ball for Lyon last season. He's got experience. Look at the difference. Tarkowski's a good player, but if he doesn't want to come, move on, because he doesn't want to come. And I don't understand why we keep mulling around these players that don't want to come to West Ham, even from Burnley. It just shows the regression that we continue to make under these owners, and that won't change until they're out of the club.
Yeah, agree, mate. And I think as well, what's concerning, especially with Wolves and teams like that, and Newcastle, they're bringing in first-team quality players, but they're also adding to the squad depth. And you look at West Ham, and we don't have a lot of squad depth at all, like in other areas. No. And so I'm thinking it's all right now if West Ham can get Antonio out every week, or Anderson picks up some form. Okay, maybe it might improve. But listen, if one of them or 2-3 gets injured, you lose Souček, for example. What happens?
Exactly. You have to play Josh Cullen, who's not proven in the Premier League. It's all ifs, mate. And notoriously, Yarmolenko's injury prone. Antonio always picks up an injury. And not only leaves you with Bowen as the out-and-out winger, because Anderson's not a winger. And then we've only got one recognised striker in Haller up front, because Antonio, even though he was so good there last season, I think he's better on the wing. I don't know about you, but I think he's better on the wing because he has more of an impact with his pace. So that leaves you with one striker. So you could say we're short there, we're short right and left back, and we're short at centre back. So that's 4 players we need to bring in. Instead, we're spending all that dosh we've got on one player who doesn't want to come to the club.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you touched on it in the unrecorded stream, but it's one of them things, isn't it, where the attitude of the player is sometimes overlooked. And listen, I hate Tottenham as much as the next person, but when you I watched their documentary and they signed Bergwijn, and they spoke to the head of recruitment, and he said, he's got a good family, he's got a good personality, he'd fit in here. And I'm like, when I look at West Ham, I think, do we have any? We don't have any of that. And we bring players in, and sometimes it works, right? Sometimes you bring a Payet in who's got a bit of an attitude, but actually he's a world-class player on his day. Other times you lump with a Zaza or a Kaleri. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's this kind of lottery we play in this transfer market. And I think Tarkowski I think you would get a good game out of him. He would be a good player for West Ham. He would improve us. But like you say, if he doesn't want to come to the club, he's not even the right position either. Not for me.
Exactly. And I don't want to be so negative, but I feel like, there's not really many positives. I think in terms of ranking all the clubs in terms of transfer business and how they do it and how they, identify their targets, I'd say we're probably the worst in the league. Worst. Yeah. I think Palace are close. But they've signed Batshuayi today. They identified him. They wanted him back. He's been there before. They know how he works there. He's familiar with the club. They signed Eze. Good player, a lot of potential, resale value, all of that. Every single club looks into that. I bet we don't. I bet Haller and Fornals is a good, good signings. Bowen and Souček are good signings. But they're just 2 out of how many have we signed under these 3 since they've been here 10 years?
It's a joke, mate.
Mate. It's just like Sam Allardyce said when they were there. They just said, we've got a prize for you. They didn't. The coaching staff knew nothing about these signings. They just hoped they worked and fitted into the team. They knew nothing. They weren't even the players they wanted.
Yeah, like you bang on, mate. There's no plan. There's no structure. It is a lottery being a West Ham fan at the moment, and it's tough, mate. But let's bring in Cad because I think he's been waiting a while.
Bring in Cad.
Come on, Cad. Evening, Cad.
You're right.
You're right, mate.
Yeah, a bit collected my thoughts since last week. I feel a bit calmer than pretty much that was,
to be honest, because it's more negative, if you like.
Yeah, do you know what? It's I think I've just come to terms with the fact that there is no goal or vision, kind of, other than staying up. As far as the higher ups are concerned, that's that is the only thing that I have in mind, staying up for the money. But as far as building a team, we've not had a kind of goal in mind since they first taken over.
Yeah, Cad, what are your thoughts on James Tarkowski? Because we've been linked with him. It's an inflated price. What are your thoughts? It's
a hard one. He's a good player. I think he would definitely improve at centre back. I also think he's is he 27 now or is he 27? So you definitely get a good amount of time out of him if we kept him for that. And especially bearing in mind he's performing now, however, Ogbon is only getting older. So that is something to consider. However, the fullbacks, just the fullbacks are the most important thing we need to do is just either at least one fullback would straight away improve us significantly. I feel like more so left back. Just I'm not a fan of Cresswell defensively, and Masuaku is more attacking minded.
Yeah, me and Corey said, don't know about you, Cad, that Jayden Bogle and Max Lowe that have gone to Sheffield United, £10 million, a collective fee for them both. They would have been perfect. They would have been the answers. They're both young. And we have no idea, why we didn't go for either of them.
Yeah, so it's a funny one as well because I've just finished studying up at Derby, and one of my mates there had a season ticket, so I've been and watched more so Bogle. I'm not too familiar with Lowe. I was aware he's in the team and out as far as Derby, but never really watched him out and out. However, I knew Bogle was cracking for his age.
Yeah.
You know, irrelevant of being in the Championship, he's always looked composed when I've seen him play. And they were straight away, whenever the talk came up of getting new fullbacks, which it normally does every window for us, it was Bogle was one player that I always thought we need to be having a look at, because I feel, well, obviously until this window, he'd gone under the radar. He's been playing since he's 17 in that Derby team. And pretty much from the get-go, he's not looked alien to, first team football. So, yeah, that's disappointing that Sheffield United managed to sign him before we did. Well, obviously we didn't even look at him. However, there's I feel like there's, well, more so right back, but there's still options out there. It's just whether we sign them or not. I feel like if you look at the Norwich team, there's still quite a few players there that have not left yet, which is surprising. I think realistically, Godfrey and Aaron's would probably be the two that I feel like we need to look at as far as players that haven't been signed yet, even outside of Norwich. Aaron's and Godfrey are just, they're both 21, 22, young players. Obviously, it's hard to judge them off last season because that Norwich team overall was so poor. However, they looked fairly competent on the ball. It's and I feel like, especially it was 13.5 million Newcastle got Lewis for left back. I feel like they wouldn't be asking stupid amounts. I feel like you definitely, maybe both of them, you could probably make a case for getting them both around, or both of them together, for around how much Tarkowski would cost on his own, which is straight away just almost a no-brainer. If that, if they did make an inquiry and that turned out to be the case, it'd be a no-brainer because you're improving right back, and not that centre backs not that centre backs needed per se, but it is a concern. I feel like signing a new centre back would give Diop a bit of a kick up the backside. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it. It's just
No, mate. I think you're spot on. I mean, I've lost count of the times me and Dan have said there's been a bunch of no-brainers out there, and we just haven't looked at them. I think Lewis was the obvious one. 13.5 mil. We should have been all over that. Left back. He's promising. He's young. He'll only improve. I like Godfrey as well. I think he scored for the under-21s the other day. Like, big physical presence, good with the ball. It's a player that we need. And even Fraser going to Newcastle on a free. Could have done with Fraser in there. I know the owners seem to think we've got 8 wingers, but it's not quite that. So Fraser would have been a nice player to have had coming off. So yeah, you are spot on, mate. We're missing out on targets that we could get 3 or 4 for what Tarkowski wants.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing, and especially, I mean, obviously Rice hasn't left yet, so it's not really an issue. Not a position we particularly need to strengthen in. However, what's his name? Ibrahim Sanagre. Isn't it like a 10 mil or a release clause at the moment? That's you could almost argue just sign him, just because some other team's going to get him soon at that price. It's almost worth just going for him. It's the rotation between him, Rice, and Souček could be brilliant in midfield. It gives the other two a bit of a chance to catch a breather now and then. It's I
think it's also a position we need to strengthen, because it only takes one of Rice or Souček to get injured. Obviously we got Noble, but then you're looking at the likes of Cullen or Coventry, and you can't really rely on them as inexperienced Premier League players to come in and do what we do, because we might be at the bottom of the table fighting for our lives, and they don't need that, and they don't know if they're good enough. So Sanagre would be brilliant, but like you said, I'm sure he'll get picked up because he's a top player. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah. It's I feel like he would be definitely Well, I mean, it'd be a cracking signing for us. However, I still need to address the fullback issues first. I think as much as it would be for the price, almost a no-brainer. I still feel like I'd rather get a fullback in first before we made that signing. I'm still adamant that the left backs aren't up to it at all. I don't know. I know Fredericks gets a lot of hate. He's not great, however, he does do a job with his pace. For what he does lack in defensive ability, he can make up for by running back at times. And obviously, everybody was hounding Johnson for that one friendly game. However, I still see a future in him.
Yeah.
He's I personally think that the Diangana news had got to him a bit because, well, can you blame him if it is the case? You see one of your academy prospects that you've kind of come up through the ranks with suddenly be sold when he wanted to prove himself at the club. You know, what message does that send to him?
And the other players as well, mate. The likes of Kemp out at Blackpool, you know, the players looking to get in like Odebeko, you know, it doesn't send a good message to any of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's and you got to think, even for the players that aren't looking at the first team yet, it's going to affect them in the under-23s league and that, because they're just thinking, well,
what's the point?
Yeah, what's the point if I suddenly do get a break in the first team, you know, score 5 goals in a few games or whatever, then I'm going to be off for a couple mil because Sullivan and Gold accepted the first offer. It's it's just the whole mentality behind that transfer could really be detrimental to the development of all the other players because, well, as you can see, obviously not just the under-23s, but obviously as everybody's been talking about, the Noble tweet, all the players agreeing with him, and there is he has created a bit of a atmosphere around, I'd say, the inner workings of the club at the moment, and that, well, who knows how long that will last for. That could completely just put a dampener on the whole first half of the season.
Yeah, mate. I think as well, like what you say about the under-23s, it's a valid point. Obviously, them looking up, and we've been brilliant in the pre-season. Odebeko, Jew, Louis Watson coming through. We've got some really good academy players. Baptiste as well went away. I think it was Ipswich or Wickham. You are right. I think they'll have a look at it. And to be honest, mate, I mean, this transfer window, it doesn't look like we're going to bring in anyone else in other positions. The under-23s might be a source of players for us because there's some players in there you look at and you think you're not that far off that first team, and I'd like to see a couple maybe get in and around the squad at least this season.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, especially more so because obviously in recent years, like Rice and Diangana and obviously Ngakia, Johnson have kind of been brought through, and obviously a few of them, well, Ngakia and Johnson were brought through kind of in times of injuries, but I feel like all the players that we've brought in recent times have stepped up to the plate without kind of any trouble whatsoever, really. And obviously, you know, your luck will run out eventually. But I guess 4 out of 4 of the players we've brought up have done pretty bang on. I feel like there's definitely a couple more in there that could step up to the challenge. There's I can't remember his name. But obviously, there's that left back that everybody was talking about. He had a blinding game. Yeah, had a blinding game. Was it last week or this week? It's, there's a couple in there.
One player, sorry, Cad, who's been linked with a loan move away. Zade Silva, obviously, he made his debut against Birmingham a few years ago. He had a bad illness last season, which ruled him out for the majority. I still think there's something in that player. He looked a player against Birmingham. He had a lot of pace. You know, he looked like he could do something in the final third, given game time. I don't know what you think, Cad, but I don't know why we're trying to loan him out when Haller's the only recognised striker at the moment.
Yeah, again, it's I definitely agree with you. I feel like he needs to be given a look at. It's obviously not just his pace and that, but the kind of few times I've watched him, which is quite little to be fair, he's not only obviously got the pace and ability, but he's was pretty happy with his like pressing and that, and actively going after the ball. It's and I feel like that's something we definitely lack as far as
Haller.
Yeah, it's and just I'd say our attack as a whole. It's Bowen's pretty good, but obviously the attack as a whole is not great at chasing down the ball and trying to win it back. It's a bit of an extreme one, but the current great teams are the ones that have everyone from defence to attack actively pressing.
Yeah.
And obviously, the great teams do have world-class players, and obviously there's a substantial rift in difference between us and the top teams in the Prem and Champions League and that. However, even just, getting that mentality drilled into the players could make a world of difference. Just having the attacking players go at the ball a bit more. It's so yeah, I think maybe Silva would bring a bit of that to the team. Maybe it encourages some of the other forwards to do that a bit more. It's I mean, at the end of the day, it is at the I guess risk of points, which we most likely going to lose anyway at this rate. It's a fairly risk-free thing to do, bringing in Silva and a couple of other prospects. Apparently, I don't know whether it was through a ex that tweeted it, but apparently there was talks about 5 of the youngsters being put on the bench for this weekend. So it's guess we'll see in due time, but it would be nice. I definitely feel like the youth deserve to be given a go.
Yeah, what's your feeling about Saturday, mate? Because I'm feeling a little bit pessimistic. But how do you feel? Do you think we can get the result? Do you think we can cause Newcastle problems?
I think now that Souček's definitely back for the game, I feel like our chances are obviously a lot better. If him and Rice are together, that will definitely bolster our chances. However, it's one of them. It depends who Moyes feels like chucking out. It's obviously see if Antonio can carry on what he did at the end of last season. See if Haller has kind of found a new groove, since obviously he did fairly well at the start of last season when he first came in, and then obviously a lot of things happened that probably affected his performances. However, it's a fresh start. Maybe he comes in and kicks on again. It's
I'm not overly confident, simply because I thought the defensive display against Bournemouth was borderline terrible. In terms of the manners we conceded the goals, and I think Newcastle have a few additions now. St. Maximin being one of them, I think he's frightening on his day. I think he can rip anyone apart. He did last season against us, and obviously they've got Callum Wilson for firepower now as well. So, I don't want to. I hate to say it, but I think we'll get turned over.
Yeah. It's to be fair, Wilson completely forgot about. He does love to score against us.
He does.
And it is. It's one of them. It really is dependent on who gets put out as far as the Newcastle team. As you said, if Maxim gets put against Cress, then game over. It's just straight away.
Where do you think we'll finish this season, Cad? Do you think we'll be involved in a relegation battle again, or can you see Moyes doing the job with the squad he's got?
Personally, I think we are gonna take the final spot in the relegation fray. I feel like even when we last had protests and that, it was obviously a toxic atmosphere and obviously things were bad. However, I don't know. I just feel like the amount of fans that are aware of what's going on this time is significantly higher. I feel like when the gates finally do get opened, there's going to be bigger protests than we've seen before. And I just feel like all of that, the whole toxic atmosphere around the club, I can't see anything going right under the current atmosphere. Yeah, it's unfortunately it is what it is with the it's with the ownership. And until our owners change, it's going to be the same atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think as well, mate. Like they scrimp and save, and we've obviously talked about some of the dodgy transfers we've brought in and players that haven't quite worked out. It feels like pre-season that this is kind of this season where their luck's going to run out, that we're not going to be a Premier League club anymore. That you look at our fixtures as well after the Newcastle game, there's some really tough teams, and then you're asking the team in November, if we pick up injuries as well, to go and get results against teams against us, and they've obviously strengthened quite well and quite intelligently, and that's why I feel that we'll be in and around there. You would just have to hope that Antonio gets a good run of form or start scoring goals to kind of keep us above. So I can see us dropping in there.
Yeah, it's and I think obviously because it's the first 7, obviously Newcastle is one of the more likely games to get points. It's still going to be hard just purely because they've strengthened. However, the run of games after that, even though, you could try and say, okay, sure, they're all the top teams, so it was going to be hard anyway. However, it doesn't matter who you're playing. That the lack of points we'll get from that run of games is just going to batter your confidence no matter who you just played. No matter... you've only got to look at last season. Sure, Norwich got relegated, but even then they managed to put in a performance against the likes of City and that. But I can't see us doing anything like that. I just can't see. Don't know what to say really. It's just the same thing every year at the moment.
Perfectly, mate. We obviously we all feel the same about West Ham at the moment. And I wouldn't, to sum it up, I wouldn't blame Moyes if he left even before the season started, because under any manager, he's seen it with Pellegrini as well and Slav, that under these owners, no matter how good you are, you can't progress and you can't move the team forward to where, we were sold the dream of getting into the top 4. So,
and this, I think that's the most important one, obviously, because you got people like Jim White who obviously don't have a clue what they're talking about. And obviously they made the promises when they came here about top 4. And, I think realistically, most of us can accept it would take a significant amount of luck for us to get into the top 4. However, we just don't want to be fighting relegation every year. It's just something as basic as having a bit of direction and, I guess, a vision per se. Like, for example, they may not play the most attractive football. However, Burnley, they just, they look, for example, make some defensively sound signings and they play a certain style of football. And irrelevant of how good it looks on the pitch, they sign players that work in that system and they get rewarded for it by not getting relegated. It's pretty much every club, like Southampton even, they've invested in the scouting network. They bring through some brilliant players year after year. And they get rewarded for it because they get to stay in the Prem every year. We're just riding our luck currently. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, I think relegation, if you flirt with it too long, it'll just send you down. Like Watford as well. They did, similar to us. They just settled with the players they had. They didn't really invest well. And, look at the teams that have come up spending money. West Brom, Fulham and Leeds, all spending money, all strengthening the squads, leaving us in the dark. And at the end of the day, that's what... I could see us going down, Cad. I just could.
Yeah. So it's kind of half of me's already accepted that we are probably down and done. But it's obviously a lot of us said that last season and things did change around. So at the end of the day, it's we won't know until all 38 games have been played. So as much as realistically... it's we probably will go down. There's always a chance, so can't write us off 100% just yet.
Yeah, mate. It's I don't know. Like, I was actually half optimistic a couple of weeks ago, and the closer it gets, the more I'm like, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a tough old season. But listen, mate, thanks for coming on once again. Extra time's back on Saturday, so you're more than welcome to come on. Fingers crossed, we got the 3 points.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Thanks for having me.
No worries, brother. Take care.
See ya.
Yes, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. It's just like...
again,
but it makes me think, if we can just get a win against Newcastle to try and lift things a bit, not to sort things out. Because we know that overall the pitch is looking quite bleak, but we've got to have something, mate. We've got to have something to look forward to.
I think it's needed, mate. It's a must-win because, that I think it's in November running against all of them. We're not getting many points there, are we? Maybe a shock win against someone, but, I think we definitely need a win to start the season well, lift the spirits, and for Moyes as well. I think he deserves a win for what he's been through this summer. I just think now that I was confident, mate, but now Newcastle have brought in these signings, I'm not so sure. I think it'll be a tough game.
Yeah, they are. They're looking particularly good for Saturday, even without Fraser, mate. That's the problem we've got, and Cad hit it on the head, especially with the old Creswell situation. It doesn't fill us with confidence at all. I mean, we can speak about the fullbacks all day, but what did you think about Ben Johnson's 20 minutes on Saturday, where he just seemed to, his head just went and he just was all over the place?
He struggled, mate. Obviously, you highlighted it in the preview. Danjuma, good player, very, close control, speedy. We didn't see a lot of him last season for some reason, but he seems to have excelled in this pre-season. He gave Johnson loads of issues, And he did the day with Johnson. He's still young, he's still learning, and I think fans jumped on his back harshly. Everyone's going to have a bad game. He had a terrible 20 minutes, but he still is the answer. He's still a very good right back defensively and going forward as well. He can play on either side, so that versatility is key for us this season. I think he starts on Saturday. I think he does. I think you've got to put faith in the kid. I think, as Cad said, his confidence would have been knocked by Diangana, probably his best mate for a while. What does that say to him? What's going through his head? And yeah, mate, it's one of them. But I like Johnson. I don't see the criticism. I think everyone has a bad few minutes, and Danjuma's a difficult player to play against.
Yeah, I think the thing is with Johnson is obviously we haven't seen too much of him, so it's difficult to comment on his overall play. But I think his best performance, arguably, other than the Manchester City game, was against United last season with Rashford. And with someone like Rashford, he looks to kind of take around the outside, use his pace, and Johnson's very, very good at cutting that space off and making it really difficult and anticipating the tackle. What we see against Bournemouth, when he's got Danjuma that's quite unpredictable, that can cut inside, and you've got Adam Smith bombing on as well. When he's doubled up on, that's where he seems to struggle, because as a young player, he's not sure whether to go short, whether to sit back. And I'm a bit concerned. I'm concerned for this Saturday, because the only issue I've got is Saint-Maximin loves to drift in centre. And if he goes to follow him and Lewis bombs on, is he going to get picked apart again? And I don't want his confidence to be shot, because I do think we've got a real player there.
That's the issue, mate. That's the issue. Do you go 5 at the back on Saturday to nullify that threat of Saint-Maximin? Because once he's in behind, mate, he's gone. You know what I mean? He did that last season. I think he just ripped us apart, and I don't know. I'd start Masuaku on the left because he's pacey and Creswell. And I look to start Johnson on the right. But, I think we need to be very careful at the same time. If Johnson has another bad game, that'll get into his head. And I don't know, mate, because I like him, but he's still only a young boy. And you need to give players like that time, because he will come good. And I said at the time before Ngakia came through that he was better than Ngakia.
Yeah.
I believe he is. I think Ngakia is better going forward, but I don't think he's as good defensively as Johnson is. Yeah,
Ngakia is actually listen, whatever happened with him leaving to Watford, it is what it is. But I think in pre-season for Watford, he's been really good going forward. I think that is the thing between the two. Obviously, Johnson can go forward, and he's got a good delivery on him, in fairness to him. But he's defensively a little bit better, and Ngakia is obviously better at going forward. I just look at it, mate, and you just think it's such a shame where we had 2 really good upcoming right backs in the team. If we could have kept hold of both of them, personally, I would have been happy to, for them to make a couple of mistakes, grow, because I think we had 2 real players there.
You know what's gutting, mate, as well? They could have been the answers to the full-back situation. You could have had Johnson left back and Ngakia right back. Because when Ngakia played against Liverpool away against Mane, he probably didn't. He kept him quiet. Apart from Mane's goal, he did nothing. And we're talking about one of the best wingers in Europe, in the world. And he kept him quiet. He nullified him all game, and that shows the signs of a really good player. He didn't let it get to his head. He seemed like a down-to-earth kid. He praised Noble. But, Ngakia, at the end of the day, you don't blame him, because he saw what was going on. He felt like he had a better, kind of stage to get into the first team at Watford, and fair play to him. Watford are, they're looking to bounce back next season under the new manager. I
God knows, mate. There's so many.
Vladimir, something. Count Dracula, let's just call him that.
Yeah.
Let's just call him that. But yeah, no, they're looking to rebuild and fair play to him. I hope he does well, but he should have stayed. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I've got a question for you. What do you think about, and it's not about Moyes because I think Moyes plays Creswell, but would you, particularly this season, look to try and introduce Masuaku into the side, even if it's either at left back or on the wing? We need to do something with him. He doesn't seem like he's going, so we need to use him.
Well, from his third kick comment, mate, he stayed, didn't he? But it's a good question. I'd look to implement him because I feel like he can still offer something. I feel like if you work him hard on trying to improve his final third decision making, because he can get into good areas, Masuaku. I feel like he'd be a good player there, but I definitely wouldn't play him at left back because he's not good enough. Defensively, he's not good enough. I don't think he's a left back anyway. But if we can get him maybe, even as a left wing back, because you got cover behind him on the left, he'd suit that. But I'd also look to bring him on for maybe a different dynamic. Put Anderson or Fornals in the middle. I think that'd work well because he's got a good cross in him as well. I definitely would, mate. What about you?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt his quality going forward is there. His dribbling ability, his pace is good. It's a weird one with him because sometimes you see him in games, particularly early last season, where he seemed to sort of incorporate a little bit more of a defensive style where he was making good tackles. His position was a little bit better. And like we said, he goes off against Villa. You don't see him again. I don't know whether it's a thing in training where Moyes just doesn't rate him, whether he's not showing enough for him to say, we'll put you on in any sort of facet. He seems to be one of them players that comes on in the last 10, 15 minutes if he's fit. If you're trying to either push forward or you're trying to add another defender on you just never know what to do with him. But,
Moyes rated him when he first came.
Yeah.
Moyes liked him and Lanzini. And the only thing that would make me a bit cautious about selling him is that on his day, he's one of the best dribblers that we got at the football club. Currently, when he gets going.
Yeah, he's definitely up there, mate.
You've got to think of that, mate. And, we're not going to get much money for him. We'll put it that way. You get 5 million top. So, in the market anyway, with our negotiation skills as well. So, I'd definitely look to keep him.
Yeah, no, I think I'd like to keep him around. I'd like to see him push on. Let's bring in Charles into the football moaning, see if it works. Hello, mate.
Hi, boys. Can you hear me?
Hello, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting times, isn't it, really? In terms of everything that's been going on, it's a bit of a weird one today because it's the first time that me and my dad have decided not to renew our season tickets. I mean, obviously this year it's obviously there's challenges that every club's going to face and all the fans are going to face with COVID, but we've kind of balanced it on the fact of whether we were going to be fun to watch or whether we were going to be worthwhile to watch, and I'm just not seeing anything worth watching, or at least going to the stadium at whatever 30%, 70% capacity and seeing us play. I mean, I felt like I wanted to rip up my season ticket last season when it was full capacity. So, so it's kind of it's a massive thing for me and my dad because we've been going now. We've had season tickets now for last 10 years or something like that, and I feel complicit in giving them the money that they so desperately want from us. This is Gold Sullivan Brady I'm talking about, and I just feel like if there's going to be a year to take a stand, then that will be it this year. And certainly with the way the transfer window is going, there seems to be no direction.
Yeah.
It's been a sad day because I want to be going to every home West Ham game and every away game, and it's just not worth it, especially with what's going on at the moment.
I think it's sad, mate. I think a lot of fans are in the same boat as you, where they've been going for many years. It's been their ritual every weekend, and they've cancelled. But you summed it up perfectly on Talk Sport the other week with what's happening at the moment. I listened in and.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think they're just digging a hole constantly for themselves. I don't know what you think about Tarkowski, mate, but at the end of the day, doing the exact same thing that they said they wouldn't do from now on, which is spending a lot of money. Yeah, Tarkowski's a proven Premier League player, But with that money, you could spend it on 3 players that need to be in there, like fullbacks, for example, that we've been lacking for 5 years. What are your thoughts on Tarkowski, mate? Because, you know...
Oh, mate, honestly, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there, really. I mean, in terms of my only memory of Tarkowski, actually watching him, I know he's done well at Burnley statistically, and obviously with Dyche he's going to be a good defensive reinforcement. But my only memory of him is getting laughed at by Arnie and straight in his face. And I'll tell you what, I took a lot of pleasure in seeing that. That was amazing. So I don't know how happy he'll be to come back to that sort of that sort of team. But yeah, I mean, practically speaking, I just think it's way too much money. I mean, like you say, I mean, you know, you've broken him down statistically, and there's obviously, you know, there's a lot of intrigue, and you know, he's a very solid defender. But we've got to look at it practically. I mean, one centre back, maybe a position that we need to reinforce, but is it the number one position of priority? And I would argue no, that is not. Fullbacks for me have just been woeful, especially recently. But I mean, I think I saw a tweet this week summing up the business conducted by Golden Sullivan during their time. I can't even remember the amount they spent on fullbacks, but I think it was something below £50 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Leicester have gone and spent £30 million on a new fullback to replace Chilwell, and I think the money's been spent in the wrong place, and obviously Moyes is going to have he's going to have a big say in it. But from what reports are saying, he doesn't even know who he wants. So how can you trust where the money's going to go and whether it's going to be invested properly? And I think one of the main frustrations of me and a lot of West Ham fans is that we as a club, I don't know whether that's down to our scouting department, I don't know whether it's down to the owners, but whether it's a combination of both, whether it's agents getting involved, but we are historically terrible at properly valuing players. Anderson and Allaire certainly have talent. They have technical ability. They can be good on their day. But are we really looking at £40 million for both of these players? You know, there has to be a better way to value players. I'm a massive baseball fan, and a lot of the baseball teams now are valuing players statistically, but they're valuing them at an appropriate price. They're never gonna they never want to overpay for their players because they just know that it's financially not going to be good for them. But you know, for whatever reason, we just splash out. I think for David Golden Sullivan, it's a way to shut up the fans, saying, look, we spent 30 million, we spent 40 million on this player. Well, it's no good spending 30-40 million pounds on a League One player. You know what I mean? You've got to have the right reinforcements in place, and yeah, it's I think the transfer business that we're doing and have done recently has just been an absolute shambles.
Yeah, mate. The stats are damning on the fullbacks. I think we've spent £16 million in 10 years. Masuaku being
that low. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the most we've spent is Masuaku for 6 at the left back. I remember. I think right back might even be 3. I think the most we've actually got back from one of them is Sam Byram, and he went for pennies to Norwich. So it's ridiculous. It's as a fan, I get a bit sick and tired of seeing David Golden and David Sullivan try and sign players that they think will appease the fans. And listen, I think on their days, Anderson and Allaire are good players, but you can't overlook these glaring holes in the team. And you know, even them coming out now and saying, "Well, we've got 8 wingers." Well, we clearly don't. You know, so it shows you the type of competency that we're dealing with. And yeah, the Tarkowski thing. Would he be a good centre-back? I think he would be. I think he'd be an improvement on how Diop's performing currently. I think he would help our full-backs in terms of his ability to cover the space and his positioning. But it just seems like a completely backward way of going around it. You address your full-backs and naturally the centre-backs will improve and will improve as a collective.
Yeah, completely. I mean, you know, and especially if you're going to invest in the full-backs, I mean, you've got to have some great crosses of the ball for Allaire to be in and around and be doing what he does effectively, which is being an effective big man, target man. Someone who can hold the ball up, someone who can head the ball, someone who can be a danger in the box, because he is a danger in the box. But yeah, I mean, you know, I was a bit deflated today listening to Dave and X's podcast, because there really doesn't seem to be anyone that we're close to, and it seems very rushed. It seems like, we got this money from Diangana, let's quickly get the old black book out and see who's available. And yeah, it just it really does. I mean, honestly, I think they should start using you, Dan, as a scout, because that's my first port of call. If we're linked with a player, then I'll check the stats out and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a shambles. It absolutely is. And
the thing is as well, Charles. Sorry, mate. I think
Karen, please.
As a club, I said to Corey earlier that on this video before you came on, we have one of the worst, if not the worst, scouting networks in the Premier League as a team, right? Because Wolves, with their they signed Fabio Silva. He's a talented player. They tracked him since he was in the under-15s for Porto. So that's a good 4 or 5 years they tracked him for. His personality, how he'd fit into the squad, how they could, structure a team around him. The problem is with players like Haller, he's a good player. Anderson as well, granted. They are good players, but we needed to do our homework on how we could get the best out of Haller in terms of, at Frankfurt, there were players close to him with, Rebic and Jovic, but we haven't done that. It's just a dysfunctional team full of individuals that we're hoping will just fit into the system that the manager wants, and you can't work like that.
No, completely right. I mean, I've tried to ask on the podcast a few times. I don't know whether it's been answered so far, but I've tried to ask how many people are actually working in the scouting department, because I honestly don't know. There can't be many. More. That's embarrassing. That really is, isn't it? I
think it is one. I think they put out a job vacancy, didn't they, saying they wanted voluntary scouts.
Is it Salthouse?
I'll apply.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I mean that just sums it up, really. I mean, you don't really need to say anything more about how terrible our transfer strategy is than just simply saying we've got one scout, who's somehow juggling world and domestic football and somehow coming up with all these targets that, by the sounds of it, are probably coming from Football Manager or FIFA. So I honestly, it is. I mean, I'm watching Wolves this week, spending money on all these Portuguese talented youngsters. It makes me sad, because I'm just like, they're not only trying to supplement the team they have now, but they are going to be a force to be reckoned with in the future. And it's because they've done their work, they've done their due diligence and their reports on all these players, and I just can't see any strategy from us. And if we have one scout in charge, or one employed scout at the moment at the club, then that's just a damning statement on the state of things at West Ham.
And I think as well at Wolves, mate, they're actually building for the future as well. Fabio Silva, they'll likely get resale value on him. I think
completely.
Vitinha as well yesterday, they'll get resale value on him. They're building for a big future. There was a similar size club to us, but at the end of the day, the differences between them and us is that they're investing in the future. They're doing the homework on players. Yeah, they're all Portuguese, but it's clearly, the system they want to build it, and they'll get the best out of them. We just, there's a massive gulf now between us and teams like Everton, Wolves, even Sheffield United to an extent, that are just leaving us in the dark, and that's ultimately what I'll pay the price this season.
Absolutely, and like you were saying, the resale value on these players that are potentially going to be global superstars in the future, just by virtue of them being picked up so early on. I mean, I don't know whether it's true or not, but reports saying that Tony Martinez is about to go to Porto. How do we let that one slip? He was highly rated for such a long time. I think he was found by the same guy who found people like Rice and Diangana, and so to let him slip through the cracks and potentially go on to be a great striker in the Portuguese league and potentially go even further is just a terrible bit of business. I mean, what are your boys' opinions on the fee that we received for Diangana?
Oh God, where to start? Yeah, well, because first and foremost, we thought it was 12 million, and I mean that was borderline ridiculous. Obviously, it has been said that it's now 18 million with a 20% sell-on clause. But me and Dan have said the same thing. His resale value after a good season in the Premier League is potentially 40, 50. So these owners have effectively shot themselves in the foot and shown real no understanding of the current market. Because a player like that who's really positive for West Brom, I think he goes back to West Brom. He's used to that side, used to the manager, can play with Pereira. He'll push on next season. And the likes of people like Leicester and Southampton are already looking at him because they know his potential. So I think it's a massive flaw, mate. And you've also accounted for the fact he's an academy product. And it's probably the one time I've seen the transfer go that I've been genuinely upset about, because he's one of our own and we let him go for peanuts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Dan. Go on.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, I think like Corey said, it's almost daylight robbery, mate, in terms of the fact that, you know, it happened so quickly. Moyes obviously wants to invest in defenders, but I don't think Moyes wanted it to happen. I think I'm still upset about it, mate, because Diangana would have got the best out of Haller. He's also, you know, he would have provided a different dynamic to West Ham for next season in terms of he's very pacey, but he can also get out of tight situations. He's a very good dribbler of the ball. And I think, you know, with our wingers, mate, with the likes of Yarmolenko, Antonio, they're very injury prone. Anderson's not really a winger. Fornals has played there to cover the lack of depth we have there. So it's really concerning, and I don't see why we let it go for such a cheap fee either. Because like Corey said, if he establishes himself in the Premier League, you know, he's worth 40-50 million pound. That resale value almost doubles. The only thing is I understand that he's not Premier League proven, which is fair enough, and that, you know, that he's a sellable asset alongside Diop. But to let him go for 18 million pound plus add-ons is absolutely ridiculous.
Part of me actually, part of me would have been happy not making any transfers had that transfer not gone through, just because I was so excited to see what he had to offer. And I think he's going to tear it up for West Brom in the Premier League. And like you say, I think his resale value is going to be triple, maybe even quadruple times the amount that we ended up selling him for. So I'm absolutely gutted. And
the only thing I'm glad about with that transfer, mate, is the fact that it went towards Slaven Bilic, because we are in this situation now because we had a great season under Slaven Bilic, the best we've had in years. We didn't back him at the London Stadium. He wanted two midfielders. He identified two midfielders that he wanted, then Donker or Carvalho. He didn't get them. And now he's at West Brom. He's finally got the backing he deserves. That's where it all stems from, mate. That's why we are where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't go over it. And also, what does it say to the youngsters that supposedly we're now going to be building our team around for the future? You know, people like Coventry, people like Ojibeko and all these players that are coming through. What is it saying to them? That, you know, all right, go prove yourselves, and then hopefully we'll cash in on you. You know, we need to be building something here that's much bigger than that. And I honestly can't see Rice staying past the end of this season. I mean, he might go this transfer window. Who knows?
Why would he stay, mate?
No, honestly, exactly. I mean, you know, I think there's, and I think every West Ham fan would give their blessing to him leaving, even if it was to Chelsea, no matter how much it would pain us. I think you've got to give him the blessing because, you know, what, like you say, what is there for him here? So, yeah, I mean, it's just an absolute state right now, and yeah, I mean, well, I say positive thing. The only thing that can come out of this, though, at least, is the owners have now got to follow through, and they've got to buy players. And obviously, you know, if this Tarkowski deal does go through, which I actually don't think it will, I think we'll be priced out. But if it does go through and we add a fullback or two to it, then, you know, it might help us. But I mean, the relationship with the fans is at an all-time low. I don't remember seeing this. I don't remember seeing the relationship being this low, even with the Icelandics, even with Terry Brown. I honestly, it's ridiculous, and I think people are starting to be aware of it. And let's just hope we can get them out soon.
Yeah, mate, 100%. Fingers crossed. Listen, Charles, thanks for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it. You're welcome back on any time.
Thanks very much, boys. I really appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing on here. I really, really love the content you boys are bringing out. So thanks for having me on, and speak soon.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Take care.
See you later.
Top boy. Right. Let's bring him on. Let's bring Mark on. Mark's been
back.
Yeah, and we've finally got Mark on. This has taken a while, so this is a big moment for us. Mark, you're on.
How you doing, guys? You good?
Yeah,
Good, mate.
Good. Yeah, just backing what Charles said up there at the end. Really enjoying the content that you're both doing, either on through here or obviously on your Twitter page with all your stats and everything. Really, I think it's been quite refreshing, actually, personally. Yeah, obviously with the Grady Diangana situation, clearly, without going over too much old ground, how disappointing that is for all of us. Obviously, the transfer fee, even if it's 18 million is what we're being told, probably still too low. I think really even for a player of his potential.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. Obviously, he's had limited time, obviously, in the Premier League. That under Pellegrini's breakthrough season. And obviously, as we all know, he did fantastically well last year for West Brom. And I think if you speak to any West Brom fan, they would clearly back that up, not just through the stats. And obviously, as you were saying yourself, Danny, obviously offers something completely different to the other wingers that we've got. Well, depending on, of course, how many wingers you're saying that we've got, of course, with the 8. Obviously, because he's, in my opinion, he likes to get to the byline, a bit more of an old-fashioned winger from that extent. Obviously, now most wingers, he can play on the right, but a lot of them play off their wrong foot, on their wrong side to cut back inside. Whereas obviously he's prepared to sort of hit that byline, obviously on his left-hand side, and I think that would offer something completely different because the amount of times that we see we get the ball into the final third and then we almost stop and come back and stop our attacks. And I just think sometimes just have a go at the fullback and give him and obviously the opposition something different to think about.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I was most looking forward to this season was him being involved in the team and getting the best out of Haller, because I feel like that combination could have developed really well and Haller could have had a good season. The most infuriating thing for me about the transfer deal to West Brom was how easily we gave in, especially in this market. £18 million. You could argue he's not proven. Yes, that's a factor. He was a sellable asset. Yeah, we needed to get money. Yeah, but £18 million plus add-ons, however much it is peanuts in this market. As Corey said before, we should be looking for at least £25 million for that kind of player. And it was done in a matter of days, and obviously Moyes wanted to keep him. I don't know what you think, Mark, but I don't know what that says either to academy products like Dew and Odebeka, who are performing well, looking to get into the side. They may as well think, no, what's the point in being here?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you look at the Tarkowski, sorry, I probably got his pronounced his name completely wrong there, but look at that situation. Obviously, we've gone in with a deal, 25 million, I think, was it for the bid initially? Yeah. And then we've added that. We've added a little bit extra. So backing up what you were saying is that clearly, Burnley have rejected our first bid, whereas it looks like, which is clearly probably a too low a bid for someone who was one of the best defenders last year, in my opinion, in the league, or certainly English defenders in the league last year. Current England international. It's well documented that we need we need defenders generally, but we could do with another centre half. I feel to play a lot. I like Diop. I think there's a lot of potential there, but I think at times he probably does have the odd game where you feel that there's going to be a mistake in him.
Yeah.
And I just sort of feel that
as well. I think he's one of the sellable assets.
He is definitely. I mean, I think going back a couple of years when we played Man United at home when Mourinho was the United manager, obviously he said how well Diop played, and I think I think that was a dig at them. But if you've got one of the best managers in the modern game praising someone, I think that tells you everything that you need to know about his potential. I do wonder, because obviously we've seen this a lot with younger players at West Ham, that we have them and suddenly we sell them and they go on to another club, and they end up fulfilling their potential, and you're sort of left scratching your head as to why that didn't happen with us.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. I just want to ask you something about Tarkowski, because you said you touched on it. He was one of the better defenders, even in Europe. I think his stats were really high. Obviously, there's been rumours that he doesn't fancy a move to West Ham. is he one of those guys where you look at him and think, I'll take him in even if he doesn't fancy the move because he would improve us? Or would you rather he just stayed where he was because of his attitude, because he doesn't really want to play for West Ham?
I think we're making ourselves look very stupid if that is true, that he doesn't want to come here. There's plenty of other defenders. I guess if we had some sort of scouting department, we might actually be able to find some. But for me, I wouldn't, because how many players have we signed in the past? I remember going back a few years ago, the Great Escape season under Kerbishley, and we were signing players left, right, and centre. Morte, and I think the biggest one that came in that was accused of coming solely for the money was Lucas Neal. And I think he ended up doubling his money, and then was called mercenary and all that. I'm forgetting his on-field performances, of course. But for me, I think that Tav would be better off if he wants to leave Burnley. Would be best off, sort of a team that are at that Leicester, Wolves, and maybe even Everton level, that are actually a club that are showing genuine ambition. The Wolves there are clear. Well, I'm not sure if Leicester signed one yet, but they're clearly backing their managers each year, and they're looking to break, at least challenge for the Europa League. With, if we're getting near the Champions League places, in the last 5 or 6 games of the season, let's give it a real go. I mean, really, how we're years away from getting to that.
Yeah,
sort of level, in my opinion. So why, if you were him, a current England international, why would you want to come to a club that's probably, we're a bigger club than Burnley,
regressing, Mark, yeah, regressing. Like you said, Wolves are light years ahead of us in terms of their scout, their recruitment, their scouting, how they do it, how they're identifying, even things for the future as well. They're the club we wanted to be all them years ago when we were promised dreamland. And at the end of the day, what speaks volumes for me is that a Burnley player doesn't want to come to West Ham. I think it's ultimately a step down in terms of football at the moment. In terms of location, it's not. But if you were Tarkowski, rightly so, in his own head, he'd be like, well, I can play for Leicester. I have the ability. Statistically, last season, he was one of the best defenders. He was in Europe's team of the season, rightly so. So, there is ability there. But for me, I'd prioritise fullbacks first and then look to get him in. Obviously, Lowe and Bogle have gone to Sheffield United for £10 million collectively. We didn't even look at them, which is beyond me, because they could have, solved the issues.
Yeah, I think it's the fullback situation has obviously been well documented. Unfortunately, none of our fullback, probably the exception now of Johnson, I don't feel confident in any of the fullbacks that they can really even defend. The drop off in Creswell, particularly in the last probably 3 seasons, I feel, maybe even 4 now, it's been alarming. Obviously, Masuaku I know he was signed as a fullback, but clearly isn't a fullback. And Fredericks, well, I'm still trying to work out how he's become a footballer, to be honest, because he's got one asset, and that's his pace. and in my opinion, he can't defend. He gets caught out, or he's a couple of yards behind the rest of the defenders. And then when he does get into attacking position, his deliveries, if he gets one crossing 5, maybe 6, that finds one of our players, I think that might be being a little bit generous. He's not good enough.
Most attacking third touches in West Ham squad last season, Creswell.
Did he really?
Yeah, most attacking third touches for West Ham last season.
Which I guess is probably the argument maybe why they do pick him. I've noticed a couple of games after Project Restart where he seems to be tucking inside a hell of a lot. And you are sort of thinking, go and shut the winger down. Stop him from getting that ball in the box. That's your job, not to be standing within 2 yards of Bonner. It's a shame, because obviously when we first had Creswell, I don't think anyone would disagree that he was a really, really good player for us.
Yeah, he's a good player, yeah.
He, got himself into the England squad, but clearly we need a left back. and we probably need at least a backup right back if we are looking at Johnson being the first choice, which would be my choice anyway, ahead of, we didn't sign a right back ahead of Fredericks.
See, this is the thing as well with someone like Creswell, because obviously you touched on it. When he did come in, he was a good player. He used to bomb on forward. His delivery's not bad. But as he's got older or whatever's happened, whether it's injuries or just age, the lack of pace, he struggles. He doesn't know if he pushes forward and he pushes into that final third, he hasn't got the pace to get back anymore. And like you say, if we're sitting deep, he tucks in because if he goes out and presses, he knows that he's going to get beaten. And that happens regularly. And we see it so often. And in one aspect, I feel for him because I don't think it's an effort thing with Creswell. I just think there are certain attributes about him that are missing, that in the modern day in the Premier League, where there's such an emphasis on fullbacks being good going forward, good defensively. It's why me and Dan always mention Rico Henry, because he's good at both. And it's you need that. You need that for the, look at Liverpool with Robertson and Alexander-Arnold. Without those two players, their attacking play isn't the same either. So you're right, mate. A left back is a must for me.
I personally think with Creswell, obviously good that you're saying there about Dan with his stats, the highest or third highest attacking stats last year. But maybe it's just an old look of things. This is how I've always been brought up. But if you're a defender, your job's to defend. I know obviously the game's involved, but if he struggles to get back, then don't go forward. Just hold your position. I know it's not always quite straightforward as that, because there'll be someone somewhere who's right now saying, well, your job as a fullback is to get forward, get on the overlap and all of that. But then if he's then got 50, 60 yards or whatever it is to get back, you're not always going to get, whilst he's still here, obviously Declan Rice coming across and covering it up. I'll be honest, I haven't seen much of Henry. I saw a little bit of the game, the friendly game against Brentford. He looked like a man who was desperate to impress.
Yeah.
And from what I saw, I felt he gave a very good account of himself. And he would be the sort of player, this Red Bull model that David Moyes was mentioning when he first came into the club. He would obviously fit that profile. But I think it's one thing, it's not just all about the signing of the players. It's also about the style of play that you're going to play. Moyes obviously is known really for being a bit more of a direct manager than someone who will play, I guess if you want to call it the tick-attacker or whatever way passing for, whatever way you want to call it. So, I think he would be a good signing from what I've seen. But as I say, that was only a friendly, so couldn't get a full view of him.
What are your thoughts on Declan Rice this window? Do you think he'll stay? Because I know he's been heavily linked with Chelsea. They've got the pulling power, after this Mendy signing, they're looking to bid for him, and they've got a good negotiator there. What happens if we sell him? Where would you invest, or would you say no, whatever cost?
I think we'll do very well to keep him this window, because it's the 15th. Is it the 5th or 5th or 15th of October? The window shuts.
16th, 15th, yeah.
Right, okay. I think that Chelsea will leave it late.
Yeah.
Because I think that they'll look to try and offload players before making a bid for Rice. And then my personal opinion is that he's probably got in that sort of 70 to 80 million pound bracket a transfer fee for Rice. Even with Corona, I think that probably drops a little bit. But I think that Chelsea will probably try and drop that down even further with player offer. Or players offering, probably only on loan. I would have imagined.
Maybe.
In terms of investment, I mean, obviously the obvious place would be that we would need to go and sign someone to replace Declan Rice. But I would still be looking at these fullbacks situation because clearly we need a couple of fullbacks, and we definitely need another striker because we've only really got one in Haller. Obviously, I know Antonio did very well at the end of last season and has done well in the past whenever he's filled in, but we can't be relying on Antonio to score.
Not with his injury record.
15 plus goals. He's obviously got a terrible injury record. Obviously, the only other guy that I've believe that can play there is Xander Silva, who's potentially ready, including the guys that have been playing in the under-23s who've done very well the last 2 or 3 games that they've had. So we're very short there. So from that point of view, nothing changes for me in terms of where we would need to invest, because I think the squad would still need that investment. And I wouldn't blame Rice for leaving. You think when he, I think it was against Burnley, wasn't he, made his debut in the league. Found to be left apart from the bowling. I think that maybe our first season, maybe at London Stadium, but we still had high hopes of maybe breaking into this sort of Europa League bracket. And since then, I know some of the players have forced moves out, but we're a million. If you think we were almost like the best of the rest, if you like, at that point, and how far we've fallen in that time frame is alarming to me. And if this current board can't see that, then we've got more problems than what I realised.
Yeah, it's tough, mate. I mean, I'm just kind of hoping FFP comes down quite hard on Chelsea at some point, because I think someone like Declan, he's irreplaceable. I think we've discussed this, but even if you did get 70, 80 million, I can't think of anyone that comes in and does the job that he does. I think your best bet, like we've said, if you have a good head of recruitment and a good scouting network, is bringing 2 or 3 players of 20, 25 mil that are a quality first team in those positions. And I think you mentioned it as well with like that element of squad depth. I think because we are clinging on to some of these players, we aren't actually going out and finding additional players that can cover. And ultimately, I think we'll end up looking at the under-23s. We've seen, I think Cullen's even been given a squad number. So it's clear that he could be staying around for a bit longer. The under-23s are fantastic, don't get me wrong. I would be slightly concerned if we start throwing like Longello and Odebeko into the mix very early doors. But I think particularly up front, if Antonio gets injured and we've only got Haller, 100% you'll see one of them on the bench.
Absolutely, definitely. And just going back as well with the Grady Diangana situation. So a few weeks ago, I understood it that we had no money in the club for any new transfers and the rest of it. We then sold Grady for 18 million. So where have we then suddenly found this money to try and make a bid for Tarkowski? I don't know if you guys know a little bit more or anything, but
it's come out of the pocket, mate.
That one. Yeah. It's a complete joke, to be honest, and I think
it's baffling. Final question, Mark.
Yeah.
What are your predictions for Saturday? Obviously, it's a big game. Newcastle have invested well. They've got St. Maximin. Wilson loves a goal against us. They've invested well. So, are you confident? You're not confident?
Up until they signed Wilson and Aarons, I was feeling quite confident. Because Newcastle aren't a great side. I think they've got some good players, obviously, as we know. But because of the situation, they've got that new blood, and I think they've just got, Wilson, as you say, loves scoring a goal against us. I want us to win, obviously, but I just feel that Newcastle will end up winning on the day. Yeah. Probably 2-1, 2-0, something like that. I just don't see us either being good enough defensively to keep them out. Obviously, St. Maximin will target, if they've got any sense, will definitely target the left back, irrespective of whether or not Masuaku is playing, because of the pace issue. And I just think they've got a little bit more about them. I think they're a little bit more streetwise than us as well.
I don't think that defensive display against Bournemouth was nowhere near good enough either.
No, it wasn't. I know, obviously, we didn't have either Randolph or Fabianski, and Martin made, from what I can understand, made a couple of bad errors. Yeah. But there's still some basics that you can do, irrespective of what your team is. And I think that we definitely shot ourselves into a real confidence downer before the season starts.
Yeah.
Well, listen, mate, fingers crossed we get 3 points somehow. Thanks for coming on, mate. We finally meet. Take care, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and keep it going. Really enjoying it.
No worries, fella. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Cheers. See you later.
Right. We're on a roll here, mate. We've got loads.
Have we got a hat trick?
We might do. I think we've got one waiting. Right. Let's bring him in.
I think we've got Finley coming in.
Here we go. Finley, how you doing, mate?
Hi, how are you boys? You all right?
Yeah,
good, mate.
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I wanted to start off with this whole like Tarkowski situation because, listen, like I feel, obviously we all know he'd be a class signing for us, but I've got to be honest. If he does actually come in, it might sound stupid, but I can't say I'd be 100% buzzing purely because of what's coming out about it at the moment. Whereas it looks like it would be him joining based on us like doubling his wages and things like that, and that doesn't fill me with a lot of happiness. Like even though it would be a class signing, just to know the only reason we get him is if we double his wages doesn't really sit right with me, if I'm honest, lads.
No, I agree, mate. I don't think you'd want a player at the club who doesn't want to be there. At the moment, we need, in this current climate, we need players that want to be there, that want to fight. Tarkowski, like you said, is just coming because he gets a few extra quid a week, and he obviously wants to get in the England squad. I don't know. I don't know where you sit with it, Corey, mate.
Well, it's worrying, isn't it? Because I think we're in a difficult position. We want signings. Obviously, Grady's left. We need some kind of reinforcement to suggest that was a good deal. I personally would never have let him go in the first place. I think you can talk about Tarkowski. He's a very good centre back. We've discussed it. His stats are some of the best in Europe. I think he slots in and does a brilliant job. But I think if he did come in for whatever reason, if we did like spend 35 mil and paid his wages, you'd see a lot of him trying to cover for Creswell. And listen, I just think, or Fredericks or whoever that pushes up too far and just isn't aware enough. I just don't think the way we're going about it, unless they want to play a back three, which I don't think you can, because then you've only got Balquena ultimately as a backup. I don't think it's the right signing at the right time. And I think we're all in agreement. We need 100% a new left back, maybe another right back, or definitely, and then some striker options at least to back up for Allaire and Antonio.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. I mean, you look at some of the deals that have been being done in and around us of clubs of like a similar size and whatnot. Sheffield United getting Ethan Ampadu on loan, something like that. I feel like we should have been all over that because, a loan deal, obviously he went out on loan last season. He didn't play too much. And, with Frank in at Chelsea now, he'll be hungry to prove himself. So I think a move like that would have been a good move for us. And obviously Moyes is a fan of the younger players and wants to bring a lot of younger players in. So seeing deals like that just fly by us, it kind of baffles me why we've not been over transfers like that, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. Obviously, Lowe and Bogle as well went there for 10
million.
And, I think Moyes likes the under-23s. Obviously, Odebeko and Jew are doing well, but I'd just be wary about rushing them in too quickly, because if you do that and they have a bad game, it destroys the confidence. It's detrimental to them. But I think we have got some very good talents. Obviously, Longello as well coming through, and Bernardo Rosa. What do you think, Corey, mate? What do you think?
Well, listen, I think 100% will be dependent on that under 23 squad. We've seen it from the likes of Cullen coming through. Coventry did well the other day as well. It's not spoken about a lot, but good goal for the third against Southend. I mean, potentially you're seeing him and Cullen as squad backups in that centre midfield or holding midfield role. The biggest concern, obviously, is if Declan goes. Obviously, it's a timing thing as well. And I think we're all in agreement where Chelsea will string this out for as long as possible. They've read the situation with West Ham regarding finances. They're nowhere the only team in the league that haven't brought anybody in. My biggest concern with someone like Rice is he's clearly worth between 70 and 80. I can see Chelsea offering 55, 60, and potentially our board snapping a hand off and saying we need money. But then the problem you've got is either it's too late and they don't spend it, and they spend it sometime else in January, or they bring in the wrong players. And we're sat here sitting going, we've sold literally, England international. You see all the stats. The player goes through him. He's best for interceptions, blocks, everything. You lose him, it's difficult to replace anyway. So, yeah, I'm a bit a bit sceptical, mate. If we can keep hold of him, it'll be like a new signing, really.
I mean, to be honest, I think as soon as Chelsea come sniffing around with, we all know if people like Maguire are the most expensive defender of all time, we all know we should be holding out for a good few quid for Rice. But to me personally, I can just see Chelsea coming in with a 50 million, couple players on loan, or maybe a player on a permanent as a part of that, and our board just biting their hand off for it pretty much.
Yeah, I think 65 straight will do it, because I think we'll panic and look to reinvest. Finn, I wanted to ask you a question about Haller. What do you think of him this season? Do you think he can come good if we play a 3 at the back with a 5 in midfield?
Yeah, I mean, I was really looking forward to him this season, and I was thinking, he was going to have a class season, and we'd definitely be seeing him hit double digits for goals. However, obviously with Diangana leaving, as we all know, and with the lack of, don't want to touch on that.
Yeah, please don't.
And with obviously the other lack of options up front, it kind of, if I'm being honest, it kind of does make me worry for him this season, whether it will be successful, because obviously we've seen him really thrive with a second man beside him. Obviously, I'm thinking of, for instance, the Southampton game at home. Him and Antonio up front was absolutely unreal, if I'm honest. But obviously, we all know we can't rely on Antonio with his injury record, and naturally, he's not a striker. So, bearing things like that in mind, from being up here and thinking, he'll bag, 12, 13 goals or something like that. I still feel that the optimist in me still does believe that, but I'm a little less confident to say with my chest that he'll smash it this season, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it's one of them ones, mate, isn't it? Like when we see him in the pre-season games, obviously when he's got service, he's lethal. He can get him around that box, and 9 times out of 10, he's pretty decent at finishing. He's better than Antonio, albeit Antonio's work rate and mobility are important. I think someone like Haller, even when he was playing with Antonio, I think it was against Bournemouth, like you were seeing Haller come quite deep and Antonio trying to push on. And I think they actually work better together when they're closer together. It's not just flicking on from Haller and Antonio running in behind. They are effective off one another. And I've just done the preview for Saturday, and it might be in a consideration for Moyes to put them two up together, because Newcastle being quite conservative, they'll be quite solid. You need something to trouble them. You need numbers in the box, and you'd hope that if he plays them, if Souček gets forward, if Fornals can find a bit of space, we might be able to do some damage. But I just think he'll go back to Antonio up front again on Saturday.
I wanted to ask you boys about the news about Wilshere, like if we're due to buy him out of his contract. See what you thought about that.
Well, I'm all for it, to be honest. I think on his day, 5 years ago, his ability-wise, is one of the best midfielders in Europe, no question. When he was that obviously you saw that goal where him, Giroud, and I think Ozil linked up. That was sublime, and he was a fundamental part in that. And it's a shame, it's a real shame, because obviously he's a good lad, and he's mates with Declan Rice and all that. He's good around the squad for the morale. I just think now, Finn, he's too injury prone, and he's almost lost it. He's at the end of his career almost. Well, out of his prime, he peaked very early on in his career as well, a bit like Wayne Rooney. So I'd cut our losses simply, if we can afford to.
I've got to be honest. We should never have signed him. I'm a bit guilty as a West Ham fan, particularly over the years, we've not seen big names come through the door. And I think on a few occasions when the likes of Zabaleta, when he come from City and Wilshere, you go, oh, it's a big name player and all this stuff. And I think the caveat with Wilshere from me was he played a few games at Bournemouth, and he kind of seemed to be getting some regularity. Don't get me wrong, he wasn't doing 30 plus, but he was getting to around 15, 20. And I thought maybe, but I always said that the 100k a week was ridiculous for him. Listen, I think he does need to go. He's not going to stay fit consistently for a season. There's no doubt his ability. I think he has actually lost that ability to, you see him drive sometimes in midfield, and at Arsenal, he's able to play off players and in that possession-based style. But I'm not even convinced he fits in our system anyway. So if you can get rid of him and bring someone in that's a bit more combative, someone who's a bit more athletic, it might suit us.
I mean, I guess we could say there's definitely a positive to it. I mean, if he does leave, it might give people like Cullen finally a bit more of a opportunity, and he could be a bit more than just a squad player for us, you know, because with him, I feel like he's one that's overlooked a lot and ignored, because, you know, he's been out on loan a few times. We can't even really call him a young player anymore, you know, he's 24, I believe. Yeah, so I would imagine he's desperate to finally prove himself at the club and be given a proper chance, you know.
Charlton fans, you know, he's been the last 2 seasons, hasn't he? They absolutely love him. I know it's a different kettle of fish in that league, but you know, I've analysed him and you know, his ability to pass the ball, his long range of passing is something that we lack. Only Dec can really do it in the squad. We need a bit more of that. And obviously, he's seen in pre-season what he can do as well. You know, and he's definitely got ability. Obviously, Coventry is the same. He's a bit younger. Hopefully, they've got some hopes for him. And Bernardo Rosa as well. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, and as well, mate, like, let's be honest, that delivery from Cullen on Saturday, 2 assists, that's something I didn't expect to see. We see him like at Charlton kind of sitting quite deep and just dictating the tempo a little bit and neat, tidy passes. But, you know, even the fact that the ball, I think, for the second goal was brilliant, and it was good to see. It was good to see a bit of energy, mate. You know, from we need energy in that. You know, when you've got Souček and Rice playing together, we do have that. But it would be nice for us to have a number 10 or any other midfielder that's in there and that sort of drives forward and can create chances.
I mean, going back to the Wilshere situation, if I remember rightly, when we signed him, it was actually Pellegrini that insisted we gave him a 3-year contract. I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that the board were opposed to like the length of the contract and only wanted to offer him a 1-year deal. So obviously, you know, 80-90% of us hate the bastards, but they might have got one right there, to be fair to them, you know.
Yeah. Final question, Finn. What are your predictions for Saturday? Obviously, it's a tough game. They've got some good players in Newcastle. You know, what do you think?
I mean, they've just signed Callum Wilson. Obviously, I know a lot of our fans obviously ain't the geezer's biggest fan. Yeah, I know we don't really like him, but to be fair, for 20 million, if he would have come to us, you know, he would strengthen our forward line an awful lot. I think Ryan Fraser on a free is a great signing. Obviously, I think the geezer's character's been questioned a bit because of the Bournemouth situation and him down in tools, but on a free transfer, I don't think you could do much better. And yeah, just purely because obviously we're still not strengthening where we need to. I'm not going into that game confident. I don't think we'll get turned over, but I think Newcastle will nick it. So if I had to predict, I'd probably say 1-0 Newcastle myself.
Yeah, I just got this horrible feeling Wilson's going to turn us over again. Honestly, I've done the preview.
I don't doubt it, mate. I
hate the bloke. I absolutely hate him. Even his picture of him smiling in his Newcastle shirt starting to wind me up.
You boys see the audacity of his interview as well, saying, "I'd love to score against West Ham."
Oh God!
Yeah,
I do. It does piss me off. It does piss me off. But
we give every striker who hasn't scored for 50 games, we give them a goal, don't we? Every striker.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, every time someone's in and out of form, or you go, I remember, like, it's not even a striker, but I remember Gylfi Sigurdsson scoring like an absolute beauty from like 30 yards against us. He's invisible in most Everton games. Come against West Ham, it's like, off you go, fella. Get your run of form.
Yeah, this game hasn't scored in 20 games, bangs in 3 against West Ham. That's it, you know what I mean?
Nightmare. Right, Finley. Thanks for coming on again, mate. Pleasure.
No worries, lads.
Pleasure, mate. Take care.
See you later, boys.
Take care, right, absolute roll tonight. This is the last one because me and you are not going to got work tomorrow. So, right, let's bring him in. Dennis, how we doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks. You?
Hiya, mate.
Good. I mean, I'll be honest with you, lads. I've put Wilson in my fantasy team.
I don't blame you.
I'll be honest with you. Anyone watching that's in my fantasy league, I've just given up one of my strikers. So
that is the only thing. You should have put Saint Maximum in there as well because he'll have a.
Well, I may have, but it really depends on who's listening.
Mate, it's 5.5 mil. You've got to put St. Maximan in.
Well, I've got Souček on my bench, so I've done all right there. So
Souček will score. He'll score for us on Saturday.
If he plays. I mean, he's been cleared for COVID, but is he match fit? That's the question.
Well, I think more to chuck him in, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
maybe. But yeah, I mean, as much as I could regurgitate a lot of the stuff that's been said already, I've actually picked up on something that you mentioned. You mentioned about the volunteering scouts. One of my friends is watching along, so I'm just going to give a shout out to my friend Leslie Garcia, part of the clique from Chester Uni. Her dad was the chief youth scout at Watford, Aston Villa, and Fulham, and he applied for that, and they didn't even return his call or email.
It's baffling, the experience.
Absolutely baffling. He offered to work voluntarily because he's semi-retired now. I mean, he discovered, name drop here, he discovered Ashley Young, he discovered Delay and Atkinson. He has a habit of discovering attacking players. If any of Watford fans are watching Tommy Smith, he found Tommy Smith playing in Hemel, and he applied, and he did not get any response from the club. So
when was this?
that was when the advert was put out at the beginning of the year, January.
And he got no response.
He got no response. No response from the club.
And they only have one scout.
Yeah. And it was a part-time voluntary position. I mean, he's semi-retired now, working down in the southwest. So maybe it was a distance thing. Maybe they saw that he lived too far away. I don't know, but he's got a good track record. So little anecdote, in 2014, do you remember we were heavily linked with Ross McCormack?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
He was talking to Jimmy Hansen, who was our chief scout at the time, saying, you've got to sign him. He's only available for 4 million. He'll bang goals. And if you go down, he'll score for you in the championship. He was at Watford at the time. He then goes to Fulham that summer. First summer signing they make is Ross McCormack. He scores 44 goals in 100 games.
Yeah, welcome to West Ham.
Yeah. So that again, they turned down someone like that. So obviously not going to mention his name, but it's my mate Leslie's dad. So yeah, there's a little anecdote off the back of that. That was just an absolute shambles from the club. Absolutely shambolic. Like it was just much like the Tarkowski bid, in my opinion, as a phantom bid. I think that advert was a phantom advert. I think that was just a sign, even if it was embarrassing for the club to say, look, we're trying to get scouts, we're trying to rebuild, but actually we're going to be on the phone to Salthouse every day this window.
Yeah. It's a smoke screen, mate. Like, I even believe the Tarkowski thing. Every time you see West Ham, I think a couple of seasons ago with Maxi Gomez, when we were bidding near on that fee, and it looked like it was a done deal. And obviously the last minute, all of a sudden, now we're not going to sign him. You can't help sometimes thinking with the board when they go for these players and they put these big sums out that they almost don't want them to agree them, and they almost just doing it. They're doing
it to say, "Oh, we tried FC," which is what we're becoming. It's like the fans are going mental because Grady Diangana is going quick. Let's get a bid into someone that's established. That what does David want? Young British players. I mean, Tarkowski's not that young. He's not old. I mean, he's 5 years younger than Ogbonna. Did not realise how old Ogbonna is as well. By the way, I thought he was a couple of years younger. He's 32, so he does probably need replacing in a year, which is quite sad. But he fits that bill. Then next thing you go, what are the West Ham fans so angry for? They've bid for Tarkowski, who's on the cusp of the England squad. That's all it is really. And I mean, less said about Jim White, the better. I mean, we barely touched on him last time, but I heard that Dave Walker's done a very bang-on impression of him in I haven't listened to it yet. My work day's been so busy. I had Spotify open. I opened the first 10 minutes, and then I had phone call after phone call, conference call after conference call. I'll do it tomorrow when I'm quality reviewing stuff. But on the subject, I mean, for example, we start off with the Noble tweet. I genuinely punched the air when I read it. Like, finally, he's saying what we're all thinking and showing that he, is the true colours coming out. I mean, I agree with X that it wasn't the most professional, but
it needed to be said, though.
It needed to be said. And also, who else is going to say it? Who else is going to say it? Because it really shows the status. Because Dave on the podcast, and I disagree with Dave on this point to an extent, but I also completely get where he's coming from, and also is the reason why, if anyone other than Noble had said it, be wrong. So this is all in the first 10 minutes. Dave said about Wilshere being very disrespectful to the club and the fact that his comment on Instagram he didn't like, which makes me show that if, let's say, Wilshere had tweeted that about how angry he was at Diangana had gone, would it have got the same reaction, or would it have been, okay, Jack, but you're happy to take 100 grand to sit at home, which is a fair analysis to make. I mean, on a human level, I feel really sorry for the bloke because no, he doesn't choose to be injured, but equally, we've offered him that money. He's taken that money to sit around and do nothing. He says he's a West Ham fan. Maybe he could have taken a pay cut, for example. I know it's not always that straightforward, which is where if other players in the club that are damaged goods like Jack Wilshere that have come out and disappeared. So if Declan Rice had done it, if Declan Rice had said, I'm really angry that Diangana has been sold, then everyone will be going, oh, well, Dec's put in a transfer request. And that's a player that fans have loved. So if it was anyone in that squad other than Mark Noble and possibly Antonio, I think there would have been a negative spin on it.
Yeah, to be fair, Wilshere's comment, I didn't agree with it personally. I thought it was a little dig at the club, maybe a sly dig. But, like he said, he doesn't choose to be injured. And, it was a gamble worth taking because in the past, he was one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. But now, it's just unfortunate. Luck's not on his side. He'd be working hard to get fit. But for some reason, it's just not working. He's not got over an injury. I agree with you. Noble needed to say it, but at the same time, many players, they're clearly unified in the thought process that it wasn't a good idea to sell Diangana, and they were against that because they all liked it. All the ex-players, commented as well. So there's a sense of unity there.
Yeah, I mean, even going as far back as Jack Collison, because Jack Collison really went in on them, saying that absolutely, where though, what's the point? I mean, one of my housemates, Sam, who doesn't follow West Ham at all, is a United fan. Even he was like, it's just ridiculous that you're selling the guy. Like, he had heard about this guy at West Brom that was just had all the tricks, all the gifts, everything you needed, and he was coming back to West Ham, and you sell him, and he was just like, what's going on at your club?
Yeah, but mate, that's why it's laughable though, because if you look at it, everyone else sees it. You don't have to be an expert to know that he's the next up and coming thing, and they're looking at us and thinking, why would you sell him for so low? And ultimately, that is the problem with these owners. They're out of touch as well, because like me and Dan have said, in a year's time, if he performs well, he's 40 to 50 mil, and you're making even more money on him. So it's a silly move, mate.
Yeah, it's just two, as I mentioned last time, two people that are completely out of touch that at one point were competent and are now just becoming competent. I mean, on the subject of Wilshere, we're paying off his deal. I'm going to question how financially sensible is that? I mean, how much money are we going to have to pay on the rest of that deal? Admittedly, there's only 1 year left. But of that transfer kitty that Moyes has allegedly got, are we then going to spend 5 million paying off Jack Wilshere? That could potentially, I know it probably won't, but that could also be used as an excuse long term. It's like with Lundberg. I remember when we had to pay Lundberg something ridiculous at the time, like 4 million, which was a lot of money for him to bugger off when even in his migraines wouldn't let him play. It was, I think it was like one week in every 4 he would train or something stupid like that because his migraines were that bad by that point.
Yeah, I can actually see sense in paying off Wilshere. The only reason why is because it'd give the likes of Cullen, Coventry a go, and I'd rather give them a go rather than have a geezer that's on 100 grand a week and he's not fit. No disrespect to him because he can't help that, but I think financially it's probably a good decision.
What I would suggest is find an American club that are willing to pay his wages and loan them to him for a year, and that way you've got the wages off the bill, and you're not paying him 4 million to sit at home, get rid of contract. But ultimately, give Cullen the ball. I mean, friends of mine that are Charlton fans, as the last lad you had on, Finn, said, they rave about him. Now, I personally don't believe Josh Cullen has the ability to be a top Premier League midfielder, but we don't need a top Premier League midfielder. We need a player with certain attributes. I mean, for example, we need someone that, I mean, if you look at the Liverpool Champions League squad of 2005, Igor Bishkan was not a good midfielder, but he came in and did a job. So I'm not comparing him to that, but Josh Cullen could come in and with a proper pair of legs for the last 20, 25 minutes when we're holding on to a draw away at Man City, for example. Whereas if you bring Jack Wilshere on, he's probably going to, and I mean, no disrespect to the guy, but I understand he's probably going to bottle that 50-50 that, Josh Cullen is going to go in for. He's not going to stretch for that ball that Josh Cullen might win to save an extra bit of time. So he's probably going to be a very, very good squad player, probably like a bit like a John Moncur for us. If we give him the ball and allow him to come on, he's not going to be a starter. He's not in the same class as Souček and Rice. He's not a replacement for Souček or Rice, but he could be a very good part of this team.
That's the thing, though, mate, isn't it? Like sometimes we turn our nose up at these players and we say, well, they're not good enough to play for West Ham. I think we've got to look at it from a football perspective and say, well, actually, they can offer something, even if it is energy. I do actually think Cullen could grow into a decent Premier League midfielder. You're right. I don't think he'll be top draw, but I think he is what our midfield needs in terms of depth. And I think he offers enough quality at least to come on to give the likes of Noble a rest. Because if Noble, I don't know how many games Noble's going to play next season, but you can't play him week in, week out. You just can't do it anymore.
And that's, maybe I was being a little bit downplaying in my words, but that's pretty much what I was saying. A player that can come in and replace players for a game, player that can come on that last half an hour when Noble is tired, or a player that can play and then be replaced by Noble for that last 20 minutes when you need the shoring up. Whereas I don't see Jack Wilshere doing that personally. I mean, he played, 20 odd minutes one game after the lockdown. I'd much rather Josh Cullen or Connor Coventry playing, and Coventry's versatility would come in. But, at the same time, the bids we still do need to build. But I mean, we'd be deluded to say that Tarkowski wouldn't improve our defence because he's a very good player. But if we are going out and out for him, could it be that Moyes is switching to 3 at the back to have Diop and Ogbonna with Masuaku and Fredericks as wing-backs? Because I refuse to believe that we would sign Tarkowski as a centre-back and not sign a left-back because they know they'll be crucified. And I can't imagine Moyes being too happy with that. So could this be a change of formation we're looking at if it is true that we're going to go in for a third bid to a player that allegedly doesn't want to play for us, if we want him that badly?
Maybe, but I think they see Diop as a sellable asset as well. So maybe if Diop, I think it'd also get the best out of Haller, and they're looking to alternatively do that because obviously Diangana's gone. But I wouldn't play Fredericks at right wing back. I think that's a recipe for disaster. If I'm honest with you.
I mean, I wasn't saying that was a good idea. I was just saying that could be the idea.
Yeah, completely.
Because, again, if we sell Diop, Tarkowski is a very good short term, like 2-3 season replacement. But I don't see the point of having him, Diop, and Ogbonna if you're going to play 2 at the back, because who do you drop? I mean, it would be Diop in that situation, but then you've got a big signing, £22 million. How happy is his agent going to be? Is that going to cause problems in the dressing room?
He's inconsistent.
He is, and I'm not disputing that. So he would be the one that gets the boot, but then that would cause more unrest in the dressing room.
Yeah. But we're talking about a player as well, Dennis, that doesn't want to come and that would come only if we doubled his wages for England. And I think we need players that want to be there because we're going to be in relegation fight.
It completely goes against what the board / Moyes said we were going to do. They said we're going to get hungry young players that want to be here. Now we're turning around, signing someone that's kids are settled in schools in the Northwest, in Lancashire, and saying to him, well, if we double your wages, will you play for us? Mm-hmm. I thought those days were over. I mean, don't get me wrong. If we were talking about peak Puyol or Sergio Ramos, I'll be saying, all right, yeah, double his wages, get him to play for us. Yeah, that'd be good. But Tarkowski's not worth that level of expenditure, in my honest opinion. He's a very, very, very good centre-back, don't get me wrong. But to double whatever wages on at Burnley, we're going to be looking at upshot of probably 100 grand. Because I reckon he'll be one of Burnley's top earners now. I reckon he'll have activated a lot of clauses to have him at least be on 45, 50 grand. And therefore, he's going to be up there with Haller as one of our highest earners. And then the excuse next year, wage bill.
We won't get any resale value either, though. It's a bad move. We won't get any resale.
It's more like the more I say these things, the more likely I think it's going to happen because we are owned by David Sullivan. So the more I point out the problems with the transfer. I mean, but that being said, there's some transfers where like we've tried or we've allegedly wanted it and been annoyed we've missed out on, because there will be a lot of fans, if we don't get Tarkowski, are going to be annoyed. But do you remember, I know it's other end of the pitch, but remember Henry Onyekuru, the Nigerian striker from the Belgian League? And everyone was going absolutely mental when we didn't sign him, like calling for the board's blood and everything. And he did nothing. He went out on loan to Galatasaray and did sod all. He's now at Monaco for some reason, and he's played 9 games in 3 seasons.
I think it's the YouTube's, the compilation of all the skills that you've supposedly got.
Yeah, and other Twitter accounts. I mean, one thing that we've missed while we've been on here is there's been an absolute, and I'm sorry to swear, but absolute shitstorm on Twitter between X and Spencer's ITK.
Oh, really?
It's got mate, it has gone. It has gone off.
Really?
Like on Spencer's thing. So I can sound like a real gossip here. The ITK guy had a bit of a dig at X. Oh, apparently he's always accurate. I don't know. And Spence said something, and then X was like, "Oh, really?" And X has found out who he is, and is threatening to reveal his real identity. This ITK that has connections to these American owners, and it's like I've been on his Twitter page, and it's like he has had no tweets in the last, and after a week, his last tweet after last week was 2016. So it's obviously someone on a bit of a wind up. You've missed that for tonight, but yeah, that there's been a bit of a Barney on tonight. But it's accounts like that, it's YouTube videos like that get us hyped up for players that are never going to come.
It'd be Karen Brady rallying everyone. So it'd be behind
Karen Brady or Dave Sullivan Jr. has been quiet for about a year. It's possibly him as well. I mean,
let's be honest. Like I've seen the clip of what this bloke said on Spencer's show, and he basically just says that the clause or something that is in the contract for Sullivan has to give X.
Yeah, they're going to take that into account.
Yeah, they would take that into account. Now, listen, on this show we fully back X clearly because it's the West Ham way, but I just think sometimes ITKs like that where they come out of nowhere and there's no actual real, there's no track record. They're just a bit dangerous. They throw stuff out there. We've seen in the past week people put stuff out about Karen Brady doing this, X, and and X.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, a lot of those I thought were just wind ups. No one was ever really serious with those. But yeah, and again, without sound like we're blowing smoke up his backside, but X 3 shows ago said the exact thing. You get these ITKs rock up. They rock up in July. They have these side information. Like I remember, God, this was going back yonks in 2009. There was a forum I was on. It was like a rival to Knees Up Mother Brown. And there's this guy that goes, "Oh, this South American winger that everyone's heard of because of Football Manager is going to sign for West Ham." And it was like he would never say who it was. And it was like his first name's Alexis, and we're like Alexis Sanchez. And he was like, "No, not Alexis Sanchez. You think Alexis Sanchez that played for Udinese is going to sign for West Ham?" This was like peak West Ham having no money. This was like when we signed Diamante. So it's been going on for about a decade now. Stuff like this, wind up merchants that just rock up and just link us with all sorts of players. But we're getting a bit beyond the point now, so I do apologise. I've sort of gone off track there. But with players, we do get linked to players. We do sometimes dodge bullets. I don't think we're going to dodge a bullet with Tarkowski, but at the same time, unless we're going to free at the back or unless we're selling Diop, I don't see it as a necessary transfer.
No, fair enough. Dennis, one last question.
Yeah.
Tough game Saturday. They've, made some good signings, actually. Wilson, Fraser, Jamal Lewis most recently. What are your predictions? How do you see it panning out?
Pain. To quote Rocky 3, I'm predicting pain. I reckon we're all doom and gloom. This is the type of game that West Ham are going to win 2-1. We've seen it, this movie 100 times before. Everyone's miserable, and I remember the Southampton game. Everyone was like, "Oh no! If they get an early goal, and we win 3-0." So, but that's my heart speaking. My head is saying that Wilson and Maxim are going to. There's a reason they're in my fantasy team. I'm not going to predict a score, but we can't possibly be as bad as we were on Saturday. I mean, a lot of that was the fallout of the Diangana transfer and a few people having the possibly. Can only speculate. But I don't see us winning, personally. And then I don't see us winning for a while. I think the next winnable game is the 9th game of the season. But as we are West Ham, we will end up picking up some points along the way. Like no one predicted us beating Chelsea and the lockdown on Yarmolenko Yarmolenko and Souček managed to pull it out of the bag. I mean, it could, again, I'm a bit all over the place, but we are I'm backing Newcastle to score a lot. I reckon we're going to leak goals this game, but we could get a draw.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. I mean, even if we do lose the next few, if we beat Tottenham, then it will be slightly forgiven. Listen, mate, thanks for coming on again. Take care.
Take care. See you later.
See you later, Dennis, mate.
See you, mate.
Right, that was an eventful show, mate. We got a lot of
I messaged people during the stream and they managed to reply. So, yeah, mate, really good. No, so all good guests, good points raised. Covered everything, so happy days.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. It was good to get everyone's opinion on stuff because obviously at the moment it is a little bit toxic, and I think we are all feeling the same way. I just hope we pull something out of the bag on Saturday.
Rain, mate. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? But I think if they turned us over, it'd be doom and gloom, and rightly so, because look at that November running. It's hideous, and we could be relegated by January, to be honest. So fingers crossed, mate. The Moy Sire can
yeah, come on, the boy, sire. Put it out of the bag, son.
Do that pointing graphic as well. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't do the. I think I've got rid of it. The old pointy Moisey. I'm gonna have to bring it back.
I'll bring it back, mate, if you want me to.
That was class. Probably did another broadcast when no one saw it, and I put it up. But never mind. Thank everyone for watching. Really appreciate it, Dan. As always, mate. It's a top chat with you on.
Yeah, pleasure, mate. As always.
We will be back for extra time on Saturday. It'll be a late one, so I'll be knackered as I am now, but fingers crossed we've won, perked up, and of course, if you want to come on, you're more than welcome to. So until next time, everybody, take care.
See you later.